number 10, the hacker. Let's start off our list with a creepypasta from the king of Fortnite creepypastas himself, Flipless. This is the story of a 25-year-old who begins his narration by discussing how his generation gets a bad rap. He reveals that he's a hacker who typically does low-end schemes, taking small amounts off of debit or credit cards. But one day he decided he wanted more of a challenge and decided to set his sights on Fortnite. Now, it wasn't about the money, it was more so about the notoriety. After hours of prep work, he managed to gain access into Fortnite, with the game mistaking him as an admin, which allowed him to ban whomever he wanted and to give whomever he wanted V-Bucks. So a thought comes across his mind. What if he created an account, added a crap ton of V-Bucks to it, and then sold it online? He could make a solid chunk of change. With this plan in mind, he decided to call it a night when something caught his eye in the system. A list of people's names who had been banned by Epic Games themselves. Curious, he took a peek. It was organized into categories. He clicked on the miscellaneous category and clicked on one player's name, Honshu, to see the details of their ban. It read that Honshu was permanently banned for slaying 5 players in real life. Honshu is a modern-day Bloody Mary and has not been arrested or caught yet and was suspected to be a hacker. Accidentally, the hacker had said Honshu's name 3 times in a row, having read the description out loud. That's when he heard someone whispering behind him. Our narrator turns around to see his door slowly opening, silhouette of a man standing there in his hallway. He had a knife. His mask had pixels on it. He walks over to the narrator, puts the knife on his throat and says, "Make that the slayings of 6 people." And at number 9, we eliminated you. This creepypasta is a take on another classic Fortnite creepypasta. So the narrator comes home from school one day and decides to hop on Fortnite. As he's playing a match, he keeps seeing other players who have the name "We eliminated you" as their username. They were all wearing the same Cuddle Team leader skin. Now, staying out of the way, he watched as all of these Cuddle Team leaders fought their way through one another. Despite trying to stay out of the fray though and wait for the opportune time to jump into the action, he was eliminated, seemingly out of nowhere, taken out by one of the users named "We eliminated you." Pissed off, he was about to start up a new match when he received a strange text message from an unknown number that read, "Get ready for your final elimination." That's when he received another text. It was a picture of his house. He called the cops. When he looked outside the window, that's when he saw him, a man across the street looking directly at him wearing the Cuddle Bear leader mask. The narrator went to hide when he realized that his back door was unlocked. Taking a chance, he tried to sneak downstairs only to come face to face with the Cuddle Team leader. That's when the police arrived, tackling the intruder to the ground. And at number 8, the Sphere. This one is about the Sphere, the giant floating ice sphere that exploded over the island and left it covered in snow and zombies. Now, the narrator of this story tells about a unique and creepy experience that he had when the Sphere first appeared in the game. He says that the first time he logged into the game when the event started, he was surprised to find himself watching a terrifying cutscene of Polar Peak. The Sphere started to move around to all of the places that the cube had previously corrupted. Now, when it returned to Polar Peak, he saw a frozen cube emerge from the castle there, looking utterly destroyed. That's when the most terrifying thing happened. The cube fused with the Sphere the Sphere rising up, exploding, destroying Polar Peak entirely. The castle was in pieces and blood was everywhere, with corpses of players lying around. What was this? Surely this wasn't intentional and put in the game. From there, the game loaded up and everything seemed off. The season read that it was season 999. The map the player was on only showed Polar Peak, marked up in red. Everywhere else was covered in lava. Having no choice but to land at Polar Peak, he made his way there. When he landed, he saw that the dragon eggs there were cracked, with the baby dragons dead, their corpses visible. He took a closer look, and that's when one of the dragons woke up. The player jolted backwards. The dragon tore off his character's head, killing him, and everything went black. And at number 7, the back bling. This one starts off with our narrator telling us that he was randomly gifted new back bling, an item called Voodoo Doll. It looked like his player character, but in doll form. Curious, he equips it and goes into a solo match. Now, when he gets into conflict, his back bling gets hit, and the player, in real life, feels a sharp, unusual pain in his own back. This continues to happen. Everything that happens in the game has a physical effect on him. Assuming that it's nothing but a weird coincidence that his mind is playing tricks on him, he just continues to play anyway. That's when he noticed that the voodoo doll on his character had blood dripping down its side. In real life, he lifts up his shirt to see a wound of his own, bleeding. He gets out of the game as soon as he can, and never looked back. And at number 6, Face to Face. Face to Face is another one from Flipless. It follows the story of a player who was really excited about the Shogun being released. He had bought the same exact Shogun mask at his local game shop, putting the mask next to his nightstand, thinking it was like the coolest thing ever. Now, after playing hours and hours of Fortnite that night, he decided to call it a day, only to realize that the mask he had bought was no longer on his nightstand. Instead, it had moved over to the chair next to him as if it wanted to be closer to him. Thinking he was just tired and imagining things, he put it back on the nightstand and went to bed. In the middle of the night, he awoke with the mask on top of him. Thinking that was strange, he just went back to sleep. The next day after work, he jumped into Fortnite, cleaning up in his first solo match. Feeling on top of the world, he headed back to the lobby lobby, only to notice something peculiar. The mask on his Shogun skin appeared to be a deeper, darker red color, as if it was kill activated. Blood started to drip from the mask, a noise that comes through his speakers, the drip drip drip. He decides to go into another match. The dripping noise grows louder. Strange. That's when he notices in real life that his mask is on the floor. Picking up, he's startled. There's blood all over his hands after he touches it. It too was dripping. Freaking out, he washes his hands, wraps a towel over the mask, and hides it in the attic, deciding that he'll deal with it later. He kept playing Fortnite, and as the hours went by, he begins to smell something, a coppery scent. That's when he hears the dripping noise again. He looks up. His ceiling is dripping blood. The narrator goes up to the attic, retrieves the mask, and takes it outside to the fire pit in his backyard and sets it on fire. When he returns to his game, he sees that his Shogun skin no longer has a mask on, as if the two were linked. That night, when he drifts off to sleep, he dreams of the mask, learning it was built from the bones of victims in the samurai era, painted with the blood of those victims. He wakes up and can't see. He touches his face. The mask was on him. He tried to take it off, but it was stuck, and then he hears a voice say, "Thank you for your body. It will serve me well. I'm glad we can meet face to face." And at number 5, Supply Llamas. This one is about a player who finds a llama in the game. Immediately after, he gets a message from a user named Skullkiller369 asking if he wants to get more supply llamas. But there's a catch. The player must agree to give Skullkiller his soul as a trade. The player obviously doesn't take him seriously, so he agrees. Skullkiller369 then tells him in order to do so, he can never turn off the game. The player says yeah, sure. From then on out, the player starts finding supply llamas in every match. During one game, he and his friend decide to reset their match, and the player restarts the game on his system. He turns the system back on and he's already in a new match. He then finds a different kind of llama, a red and black one instead of the purple and blue one. He opens it and there's no supplies, but there is a note. He reads the note and it says, "I told you and you don't listen." The player freaked out turns the system off for the night. The next day he finds more llamas, 3 of them, all with the same note. The player then goes to find his dad to show him how well he's doing, and then his dad looks at him and asks, "What are you doing in my house?" He doesn't recognize the player at all. The long and short of this story, well, everyone knew that he was good at the game, but his family didn't know who he was afterwards. Yeah, we didn't say all of these were perfect horror stories, now did we? And at number 4, Red Team Leader. Another creepypasta from Flip-the-Script. This one is about a player who buys the Cuddle Team Leader skin from the Fortnite shop, seeing that the skin was only available for an hour and on sale. But when he uses the skin, the color isn't pink. It's blood red in the pregame lobby. He thinks it's a glitch. The match starts and the skin is back to its regular pink. But after the player starts to kill people, the skin starts to turn red. Faintly, but it's there. The more players he kills, the darker the red becomes. Eventually, he's one of the last 10 people in the match. After a solid firefight, he's one of the last 2, and goes after his remaining opponent. But as he takes him out, the player goes down, which is weird since it's a solo match. He shoots the player again. Nothing happens, the player's just down. That's when his controller in real life starts to move. His avatar also starts to move on the screen. The avatar takes out an axe called the chopping block and begins to chop off the enemy's head, decapitating him. The Cuddle Team Leader avatar removes his mask, revealing its head. One eye shot out of its head and slits on its face, forcing a smile. Then the game ends. Up next at 3, The Storm. The Storm tells the story of a terrifying storm experience during a solo match. The player in this one is going about their business, taking out foes when they realize that the storm is about to close in on them. Except it's no regular storm. This one is red, with mist. So the player runs heading towards the safe zone but can't quite get there. He gets caught in it. As he keeps navigating his way towards the safe zone, still hopeful, images start appearing in the storm. Horrific ones. Ones that shouldn't be in the game. His body in real life starts to itch. He starts to feel actual pain. So he decides to keep running in the game, heading towards what he thinks is a launch pad. His character's health gets to 30. His body in real life begins to break out into hives. As he gets to the launch pad and flies off, his health is at 20. His vision starts to get weird. Then his health falls to 10. And the player starts to lose feeling in his body. This is when he breaks out into the safe zone and all of his symptoms disappear in real life. So, of course, he quits the game and hasn't played Fortnite since. And at number 2, We Eliminated You. In this creepypasta posted and beautifully drawn by Jordan Persegatti, we get the tale of We Eliminated You, one of the more popular Fortnite creepypastas that have made the rounds on the interwebs, initially created by 34 Matthews HD. Anyway, it's the story of a kid who hops on Fortnite after school one day when his mother hasn't gotten home yet. Everyone in the pregame lobby is wearing the Cuddle Team Leader skin. Noticing a creepy theme. Once he gets into the match, he realizes that everyone's username is We Eliminated You, which is weird because he can't have the same name as everyone else on the PlayStation Network. So he assumes that the server was filled with hackers. He ends up making it into the top 3 and watched the last remaining 2 players duke it out, waiting for the victor to surface so he could just take them out with a shotgun. As he was waiting, he notices that there's a structure built nearby. It reads, We Eliminated You. Freaked him out, but he still ignored it. Eventually, the 2 Cuddle Team Leaders who were duking it out are finished, leaving one remaining foe. The player player popped out of his hiding spot and shot him in the head. But it didn't faze his opponent, so he shoots him again. Nothing happens. The player assumed it was a hacker. Eventually the hacker shot him and knocked the player out of the match. Frustrated, he turned off his PS4 annoyed. He decided to go get some fresh air, but before he leaves his house he gets a text. It's from a number he didn't recognize, and it read, "Get ready for your final elimination." But what was worse was the photo attached to the text, an image of the player's house. The player panics and locks himself in his bedroom. He calls the police, and while waiting he looks out the window, where he spots a mysterious figure watching him, and they're wearing the Cuddle Team Leader mask. He hides in his closet as he hears the mysterious figure come through his back door. As he's hiding, his phone goes off and makes a noise. He panics, thinking that his cover's blown, and looks at the phone. He sees that he's gotten a text from that same number saying, "I know you're in there." And last but not least, and at number 1, The Whisperer, which is kind of a similar story to the last one we just did. This one tells the story of a boy named Timmy whose parents go out of town to visit his sick aunt. Home alone, he messages his pal Mark, his neighbor, to come over and play Fortnite. But Mark wasn't around, so he hopped on the PlayStation communities to find a partner. He finds a post by a user named BattleBus524 who wrote him, "I'm the best Fortnite player of all time. I can carry you. Mike needed." Not being overly great at the game, this piques Timmy's curiosity. But he was a bit concerned since the player spelled Fortnite as Fortnite, N-I-G-H-T. He reaches out anyway, and the guy's name is Drew, a 31-year-old dude who lives fairly close to where Timmy lives. They start playing together and Drew gets killed immediately. Timmy jokes about it and Drew got really aggressive with him. The more that they played together, Drew started blowing things up recklessly and compromising their matches, and getting killed off really quickly. Drew would whisper to Timmy in his headset, "Behind you," even though no one was behind Timmy. So eventually Timmy got annoyed, made up an excuse to leave Drew, and blocked him. He then started going on solos. A few minutes later, a random user sends him a voice message. Timmy opens it and the voice says, "You shouldn't have done that. I recommend you don't block me again." A little bit freaked out, Timmy decides to ignore it. 20 minutes later, Drew sends him another message. This time it wasn't a voice message, it was a photo of Timmy's house. A second later, another message pops up from Drew. "Check your front door." Timmy, freaking out, goes to his front door. No one's there. He opens it and looks down though, and there's a nutcracker there with a note attached to it. The note reads, "It reminds me of you." It was Timmy's favorite skin to use in the game. Timmy calls the cops and messages his friend Mark, who tells him that he was right to message him. He saw a guy in the bushes out front of Timmy's house. Timmy goes to hide in his parents' closet, when he remembers that he didn't lock the back door. That's when he hears the door creak open. Timmy panics and keeps texting Mark, who tells him to be quiet and not make a sound. He hears someone moving around the house, whispering, "I just want to play games." 10 minutes go by, and Mark starts to worry that he hasn't gotten a response from Timmy for all of his last messages. Finally, he does get a message from Timmy though, and Timmy says that one of their neighbors knocked the guy out. Mark asks if Timmy wants to come over and spend the night at his house to feel safer. The response he gets back reads, "Come over. I want to play Fortnite." In other words, Timmy's dead, Mark. And at number 10, Hearing Things. Starting off our list is a creepypasta from the biggest Fortnite creepypasta storyteller on YouTube, currently, Flip-the-Script. In this one, our protagonist tells us how he and his buddy Brent loved playing Fortnite together. While solos were fun, playing duos was amazing. They had great teamwork and chemistry, and they kicked some serious butt. They even wanted to start playing competitively. Unfortunately though, Brent had died in a tragic accident and was hit by a drunk driver. Our protagonist struggled a lot through this time, and when Brent's mother was going through her son's things, she gave our protagonist Brent's Fortnite limited edition headset as a gift, telling him that Brent would have wanted that, and that he's the only one who deserves to have it. He decided to use it and played a solo game in Fortnite. It was like the headset was a good luck charm, and he was killing it. And it was like he had a piece of Brent still with him, and that was really comforting. It helped him cope. After a few more games though, something odd began to happen. He kept hearing strange noises, like breathing, even though no one was in his party and he was playing solos. He examined the headset but nothing looked out of the ordinary. So he reset his Xbox, and everything went back to normal. But as soon as he loaded up the game again and entered a match, he heard the breathing again, and the sound of someone saying the word hello over and over again. It sounded like Brent. Eventually he called out saying, "Brent?" And the voice responded saying, "What's up man, how have you been?" They carried on a conversation for a bit, and Brent manages to answer all of his questions that only Brent would know the answers to. That night our protagonist has a nightmare of Brent being hit by the drunk driver. He wakes up and hears noises coming from the headset even though his Xbox is turned off. The voice tells him to go to the spot where Brent died, so he does. He drives over, and that's when he sees a ghost that looks like Brent. That's when our protagonist is hit by a car himself. He comes to and hears a voice that says, "Stay away." Moving on to number 9, Squads. This creepypasta by YouTuber Mr. Gruesome tells of a gamer who was playing with his best friends in real life, working together as a squad. Around mid-season 4, something strange started to happen though. That morning, our protagonist hopped on Fortnite to discover his pals were already online. So they went on squads together and began to play. The first match was fine, and they had a great game. So they played a second one. This time though, in the lobby, something odd occurred. Everyone aside from their group was wearing the default skin. Thinking it was a bug or a glitch, they just shrugged it off. They hopped off at retail and then began to loot and get resources. No one else was around. They made their way out of retail and bam! bam! That's when they saw their first player, wearing that default skin. They began to build, and our protagonist and this other unknown player started to shoot at one another. That's when our protagonist began to feel pain in real life, a burning and stinging sensation. He managed to knock the other player out even though he was aching. Luckily, the pain eventually faded. His pals over mic asked if he was okay and he told them yes, so they continued to play. That's when one of his friends noticed something weird. The game still said that there were 99 people left alive. Then they looked to the horizon and saw dozens and dozens of default skins coming towards them. Utterly confused, the squad started to build for protection. The default started firing. One by one, his pals were killed off. Somehow, our protagonist managed to survive, with only 5 health left. Frustrated, he left the match. He was once again feeling that immense pain, the burning and itching sensation. Into the mic, he exclaimed, "Guys, that was crazy." But no one answered him back. He tried texting them and calling them, but still no answer. He decided to head on over to one of their houses instead. But as he got there, the house was in chaos. An ambulance was parked outside and his friend's family were freaking out. Turns out, his friend had died while playing in the game. And it wasn't just this friend, it was all of them who were in the squad, except him. In at number 8, you hear that? This creepypasta comes from YouTuber Big Mama Eternal. It tells the story of a 15-year-old girl named Annie, who at the start of the tale is found in her room by her mother, surrounded by blood and debris. Her room has been trashed, all of her toys have been disfigured, and stuffed animals have been decapitated. Annie tells her mom that the singing ghost girl Lily from the game was responsible. So, how did this come to be? Well, before her room was trashed, Annie was playing Fortnite. She had heard a rumor about a ghost in the game and decided to check it out, thinking that it wasn't real. Playing a solo game, she eventually found this ghostly entity, and it began to talk to her. Rather than address her by her username, SweetLover27, the ghost called her by her real name, Annie. The ghost asked her, "How many lives do you get if you die in real life?" Freaked out, Annie tried to unplug her Xbox. Even with the cord unplugged, the system in game wouldn't turn off. That's when she saw one of her friend's avatars. But they didn't look like they normally did. Their eyes were black and they were screaming out Annie's name. In a gruesome show, her friend's avatar then screamed as their character's head popped off. This is when Annie's avatar started acting out outside of her control, chopping up her friend's avatar. The ghost girl chimed in once more, laughing at the bloody exhibition. That's when the strangest thing happened. The body of the avatar came flying through her television, filling up her room with blood, bones, and guts. And at number 7, Error 666. Error 666 comes from YouTube channel O1G. The story is about a gamer who, after turning on Fortnite, noticed that something seemed strange. 2 days prior, he had received an update for the game, and ever since installing it, things were really off. The screen kept flickering on and off, and despite changing his HDMI cord and looking at his PlayStation thoroughly, it still happened anyway. He assumed it was a bug, and his friends didn't have any problems either. Now one night at 9 PM, it got really bad. The game was distorting, the textures in the game had changed the color red, and it looked really hellish. His party chat sounded like demonic voices rather than the voices of his friends. He couldn't make out what they were saying, but their voices were violent and terrifying. That's when an error message popped up on his screen that read, "Error 666. Please turn off the game." And that's where the creepypasta ends. Short and sweet, I guess? Moving on to number 6, The Emote. The Emote is a creepypasta by YouTuber SuperDanny200, and this was their very first creepypasta. So, well done. In the story, it was summertime and our protagonist had just gotten home from summer school. They turned on their PlayStation. Before getting into a match of Fortnite, they decided to check out the shop. That's where they found a brand new emote, but it was a little weird. There was no name or title and no description. In the emote card, the character was holding a bloody knife. Intrigued, they tried to preview it, and it was really intense. Their character, wearing the Vortex skin as per usual, raised a knife and stabbed an invisible character, and blood went everywhere. So he was like, "Hey, I'm just gonna buy it," having enough V-Bucks to afford it. From there, he headed over to a solo match, landing in Tilted Towers. Looking for loot, he placed a trap and managed to kill another player. In victory, he decided to use the bloody knife emote and just check it out. As soon as he did though, he heard cries and a demonic voice. The voice said, "I will hunt you down tonight. I know where you live." Freaked out, he left the match and decided to play something else. Later that night, he turned his PlayStation back on, only to hear the same demonic voice say, "I am back. There is no escape." He cried out, "Who's there?" And the voice answered, "Look out your window." To his shock and horror, he saw his character, wearing the Vortex skin as per usual, holding a bloody knife.
Halfway through at number 5, don't buy an account. This should be fairly obvious. When this user got his account banned, he got frustrated as hell, but after, they decided to buy an account similar to what they had lost for seemingly no reason. After a few hours, they found the perfect one for only $5. When they bought it, they obviously were happy, but there was a skin they hadn't seen before, and it talked. It said it was the person who sold the account. The seller was gone off the site, so they couldn't return it. The skin told the user that it had 24 hours to sell the account, but they had already owned it for 20. They tried to sell the account on every platform. The skin yelled your time is up, and they felt a push. A shadowy figure was there, saying that he'll make an excellent addition to his collection. But before he could collect the user, the account got banned. Somehow Epic knew the account was being bought. the shadowy figure disappeared, and the user never played Fortnite again. Number 4. The build. When you run around maps in Fortnite, you see crazy builds, mostly defensive, but some people are somehow able to be creative in this madness, with castles being built right in the middle of the later circles. However, it's those you need to be wary of. These castles are fortresses with traps and even sometimes torture rooms, where the duos can bring you in, bash you down to low health, and then heal you just to do the same thing again. You can't fight it no matter what. However, this one castle was the scariest. It was tall, unlike anything he'd ever seen before, and one user was wearing a dragon skin. The author walked in and they shot at him and he died. However, he didn't lose. He was placed on their team, but they were playing solos. He looked like a knight, and he was defending the castle. And after the round, he couldn't stop. He's been stuck there for a few days when writing, and he can't escape. He's stuck in the build as a guard for all eternity. Getting close to the end here at number 3, Hide and Die. When this user loaded into the game, they were greeted with a cutscene. However, there had been no new update. What he didn't know is that he was chosen. 2 characters ran into a barn. They hid and one covered the other's mouth. A few seconds go by of footsteps, but then they stop. The characters seem relieved, but then they got grabbed and brought to a new location the user had never seen before. It had an altar that looked as if someone was preparing a ritual. They forced the characters onto the altar and started chanting. After a few moments, a shadow flew out of the altar and merged with one of the characters and forced it to fight the other. When the other was dead, the shadow left, leaving the character to see what he had done. This let the captors pickaxe him to death. This ritual seemed to give them more power in life and also some new powers. The captors also, just for the hell of it, turned out to be cannibals and ate the character in a gore-filled scene. Gore-filled, not gore-field. Number 2, Dead Eye Will Get You. This author had to run to the store to get some groceries for his mother. As they did, a car sped through the intersection. Everything went black. The author woke up almost instantly after being hit. The driver had bailed, but some passerbys had alerted the police. It was a miracle, but miracles can end. He goes home and doesn't mention what happened, just plays Fortnite. If you get hit by a car and just walk away, that's something to celebrate. Most people don't get that chance. So yes, tell your mother, don't just go play a video game. Anyway, when he got home, he had a friend request from someone named Deadeye. They joined his lobby and said, "I'm here to bring you back," and the author left. The item shop says Deadeye is a bounty hunter from beyond the grave. So was the author supposed to die when he was hit, and now he's going to be collected? The user went to sleep and had a vivid nightmare of Deadeye dragging him into a grave. He woke up covered in sweat. Then he heard a voice. "Finally, I have found you." He ran outside and saw a tombstone on his front lawn. The name engraved was his. And finally, taking our number 1 spot, Killer Bots. What do you think of bots? To some players, they're annoying. I'd rather just brush up my skills and improve while playing against actual players. But to others, they save them from a rage quit and make Epic more money. This author, however, could not escape bots. Whenever they joined a squad game, the same 3 bots would join. They couldn't play solos or even duos. They were stuck with these bots. The next morning, the author was talking to friends about these bots. They got confused. They thought the author was with them at a concert the night before. They even had a picture of the group. It was him in the picture, but it wasn't. After school, his mother thanked him for cutting the grass. He logged onto the game, but this time there was only one bot. It said, "Thank you for your patience. Soon you will be replaced." He goes downstairs and his family is nowhere to be seen. He gets a text from a seemingly random number saying his family is on a vacation with someone who looks exactly like him. Someone kicks in the door. They look exactly like the author, but the doppelganger starts choking him, and everything goes black.
Starting us off in at number 10, Tomato Head's Revenge. We're starting off our list with the sequel to one of our previous creepypastas that we highlighted in a prior list by Fortnite Creepypasta King, Flipless Script, called Tomato Head Terror. Now for context, in that one, the beef boss took over all of Fortnite with his franchise, and killed Tomato Head in the process. As you can guess by the title, Tomato Head gets his revenge on Beef Boss, describing revenge as a dish best served cold. Of course. Now the story starts off by revealing that Beef Boss has had trouble since the destruction of Tomato Town. Tomato Head became a martyr, a god to the people, which spawned a cult. It got so bad that Beef Boss had to go into hiding, loading up on firearms to protect himself. He had dreams of being killed, with the Tomato God being his own personal Grim Reaper. The people of Greasy Grove decided to resurrect Tomato Head as Tomato God, and to do so needed a sacrifice. So who did they want? Well, Beef Boss, of course. They flooded his hideout that night, taking Beef Boss to the Tomato God temple, where they brutally sacrificed him, causing his blood to pour out, giving birth to the Tomato God. Now for more creepypastas like these, please check out Flipless Script's channel and check out his Patreon while you're at it. He's doing some really good stuff. Up next at 9, Glitch. This creepypasta comes from YouTuber Mr. Gruesome. The narrator, a 14-year-old in middle school, tells of how he was playing Fortnite one night when his family wasn't home. To start off the night, he began with some solos, landing in Retail Row in his first match. He opened up a chest, looted up, and that's when he spotted another player. Turning around, he was ready to shoot at them, but all of a sudden, the game glitched, and he was outside of the house that he was in, with the game informing him that he had 1 kill. Thinking that was odd, he continued to play. He left retail, and eventually found another player. He was about to shoot at them when the game glitched again. And where did he end up? Outside of the same house in Retail Row. Getting sick of this, he ended up leaving the match and started up a new one. Jumping out the battle bus, the game suddenly glitched, and he ended up outside that same house in Retail Row. Frustrated, he turned off his Xbox. He decided to get some fresh air, clear his head, so he went to go outside of his house. But in a blink of an eye, as he opened his front door, he realized that he wasn't stepping outside. He was back in his bedroom. He went to his front door again and bam, back in his room. He tried again and again and again and kept getting the same result. So he tried breaking a window to get outside, but as soon as he jumped out, the same thing happened. He then states that he's been stuck in his house for about 3 days now, and he hasn't seen his parents since. He can't get out of the house, and none of his technology works. He explains that he's recording this in hopes to explain to whoever finds it that he's stuck inside of a massive glitch. And at number 8, The Llama. This creepypasta comes from a channel called iTrolls Plays. It begins with a player walking through a dusty divot. Now out of nowhere, he spots a loot llama, sitting up on a tree just across from him. That's when he gets a strange feeling in real life. He just ignores it, and heads over to the llama, destroying the tree that it's on. After he chops it down and collects its resources, he can't see the llama anywhere. So he turns around, but surprise surprise, there it is. But something's off. Its eyes look at him, as if it can see him. He jumps back, shocked, and next thing he knows, the llama's gone. Trying not to think anything of it or assuming it was a glitch, he continues his way through the game, eventually getting to Moisty Mirrors. To his surprise, he stumbles across another llama, and its eyes move. It's gotta be the same one. That's when he hears something bone-chilling. He swears that it says to him, "Search me." Next thing he knows, an AR goes off and another player is attacking him. The two quickly get into a conflict, with the player quickly building a base for protection. He builds a box around himself, but then he turns around, and who's inside of the box with him? The llama. He hears the words, "Use me." Out of options, and with his opponent breaking through his defenses, he has no choice. He searches the llama, and that's when this happens. Yep. Gotta love a jump scare. And at 7, The Forever Game. This one comes from a YouTuber named Mr. Squidzle. The narrator tells of how he plays Fortnite for hours and hours. He describes how time is always a problem for him, and how he constantly wonders if he'll have enough time to sneak in another match, never knowing if he'll end up getting knocked out early or if he'll make the long haul and do well. One time, on a day that he states was May 14th, he was playing a solo match and having a pretty good game. He managed to make it to the top 5. He knocks out one player, and then he notices that another 3 are locked in an epic duel, which causes all of them to be eliminated. Now, being the last of 2, he sees his final opponent approaching him out of the corner of his eye. Out of nowhere, a cold chill runs down his spine. He gets nervous, but he just chalks it up to, the anticipation of the game. He and his foe end up building quite high up into the sky as they avoid each other's firing. But that's when something odd happens. A bright hole opens up in the ground below his character. He falls in. He doesn't die, but everything around him goes pitch black. Not just in the game, but in real life. He thinks he's dreaming. The game comes back on. He can't shut off the game, and he can't physically stand or move. So he plays. The match starts over, and he's at Snobby Shores. He gets shot at, and his character dies. That's when he gets a really bad headache in real life. The match starts over immediately. He starts to hear a voice repeating over and over again in a whisper, "That's not enough." So he continues to play. He wins matches, but they start over again. Fearing that this will never end, he eventually hears the voice say, "One last match." He dies in that match though, placing 8th. But then another one starts, and the headache comes back. He starts to scream at the voice, but there's no response. The next match that starts is absurd. There's no map, no other players, just his character with a shotgun. He's inside of a house, but everything inside of it looks really strange. That's when he realizes that inside the house, it looks just like his own house in real life. He moves his character, and in real life, he hears steps from upstairs. Now in real life, he's in the basement, so he moves his character to the basement door of the house. The door opens in the game, and it opens in real life too. Next thing he knows, in the game he sees himself sitting in front of his TV. With his character, he approaches himself. He moves his character to the TV and shoots it. Now in real life, the TV explodes and everything goes white. He wakes up on the basement floor in what feels like hours later. He notices that his PlayStation has been blown to pieces and he even finds a shotgun shell under his couch. Everything seems fine though, but that's when he looks at his phone. The date is now November 27th. And at number 6, No Taunt, No Cry. This creepypasta follows the story of a player who strongly dislikes taunting and trolling. He says that nothing sucks more than being so close to defeating an opponent only to lose and have them do a dance emote over top of you. He tells of a monster in the game who kidnaps players who taunt others after they've killed them. He saw it happen in the flesh once. The player was sucked away by this monster with a notification that read that the player had disconnected from the game, and they were never to be seen again. Some think that this is Epic Games' way of trying to enforce some sort of disciplinary action. Others say that it's an evil entity within the game. The player describes how he was playing a squad match with his friends, and how one of his friends said that he shouldn't taunt others for fear of being banned. But one of his buds didn't care. He shot down some opponents and immediately started taunting them with an emote. That's when the player saw the monster. A rift opened up in the game, and a cage appeared, and when the monster caught his friend, he was thrown inside of the cage. They never heard from his friend again. And at number 5, Tomato Head Terror. This creepypasta dives into the hypothetical history of one of the locations on Fortnite's map. Tomato Head Terror tells the story of Tomato Man's lost head and the rivalry it had with Greasy Grove's beef boss. The rivalry goes way back, between the opposing town's pizzeria and the burger joint Durr Burger. Durr Burger expanded all across the towns in Fortnite, being adored by many, and Beef Boss enjoyed the profits that his successful chain brought him. But there was one place that he hadn't conquered: Tomato Town. The Beef Boss headed to Tomato Town to offer Tomato Head a deal, but Tomato Head declined his offer. But no matter how many offers Beef Boss made, Tomato Head would continue to reject him. So the Beef Boss plotted a different way to get what he wanted. He decided to destroy Tomato Town and Tomato Head, burning the town to the ground. It dragged Tomato Head out of his burning pizzeria and decapitated him. Beef Boss then displayed his head as a trophy, as a warning to anyone who wanted to compete with his restaurant. Don't try. And at number 4, Lying Within. We actually covered one of these videos by Jordan Persegatti in our last video. Essentially, there's a narration of a creepypasta while he draws a Fortnite-themed illustration that is absolutely brilliant. Anywho, in this creepypasta, which was inspired by the Raven from Fortnite as its creepy antagonist, this one is about a high school kid who tells about him and his friends going on a trip together after high school. They all bonded over online gaming, particularly Fortnite. One of his friends named Bridget he had originally met on World of Warcraft, and she showed him the ways of the game, which is how they formed a bond. Turns out that the two of them went to the same school, and the summer after graduation, the protagonist, Sean, Bridget, and their two friends, Ryan and Elise, ended up taking a road trip to an abandoned mansion as a big final hurrah before they all parted ways to go to university. As they were grabbing lunch just outside of the town with the mansion, a crazy old man approached them and started shouting, "There's more than brick and mortar in them walls." Once they got into the old house, they were in awe of its immensity and eeriness. Sean snapped some photos as they broke into the boarded up house. Inside the house, it looked as if it was 100 years old. The group split up and Sean found a piano. He sat down at his bench to discover the piano still worked, so he played a few keys. His playing was interrupted by one of his friends, Elise, screaming as she almost fell off the balcony. He ran over to her and Elise told them that someone had tried to push her off that balcony. They decided it was time to leave, but before going, Sean wanted to snap a few more pictures before they headed out. Going upstairs, he snapped some more photos and went into the bathroom to grab a few pictures. Looking up from his camera, he spotted a shadowy figure, which appeared out of nowhere. Freaked out, Sean called out to his friends, hoping that it was just them. But as he backed up towards the other side of the bathroom, the figure started to bolt towards him. Sean turned and ran. The figure was chasing him, but he managed to make it down the stairs. Looking back, he saw the figure jump down towards the foyer, sprinting towards him. Sean made a run for it, but ended up tripping and fell down the stairs leading down to the basement. He looked up in time to see the figure at the top of the stairs and the basement door shut. The whole room was dark as he heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Then, his camera, which had landed a few feet away from him, flashed. He reached for it and looked at its screen, which revealed the last photo. It was Sean holding his hands up to block the flash from his eyes, and behind him were hands reaching out for him. And Elise's body was jutting out from the brick wall in the background. The old man who had been in the diner before with them was also visible in the camera screen. That's when Sean heard the voice in his ear. "I told you there was more than brick and mortar in them walls." Up next, number 3, The Donation. From YouTube channel Next Gen Entertainer, The Donation is a tale of a player named Ricky, an ordinary guy who was having a pretty rough time in his life and was struggling to make rent each month. So as a get-rich-quick scheme, he decided he was going to try to make money off of playing Fortnite. He wanted to be like Ninja or Myth and make some cold hard cash from it. He set up a Twitch account, setting up his first stream as Ricky Plays. After about 10 minutes of streaming and no views, he received a comment from a Twitch player named Vanguard13. Thinking that it was odd since his stream had no viewers, he read it, and it said, "So you want to be famous?" He replied saying, "Hell yeah, I'd die to be famous." And the account responded immediately with a follow-up comment that said, "Remember me." Time passed. Ricky managed to get about 2,000 followers on Twitch and played every day. One day after an hour of streaming and grinding solos, he had about 87 viewers, although he never really interacted with the people watching his stream, unless they donated to him. He got a notification about someone donating him $10, and attached to the donation was a comment that read, "Remember me." As soon as he read that comment, Ricky lost control of his character, and was sniped from 278 meters away. His screen went to the camera of the player who killed him, and that's when things got weird. It was someone wearing the Raven skin, and the player was facing the screen, which is something that can't be done in Fortnite. The name of the player was Vanguard 13. His stream then went dead. Ricky's monitor also went dead, so Ricky had to drive down to his local computer shop to pick up another. On the way there, he noticed a poster hanging outside of a store with the Fortnite Raven skin and the words, "Watch Ricky Plays." He went to the shop where the poster was hung outside and inquired about it, but they didn't know how it got there. When he brought them outside to show them, the poster was gone. From there on out, he kept seeing things written on walls that read, "Watch Ricky Plays," and kept hearing creepy laughter. When he was back home, every banner ad that he encountered online was an ad for his Twitch channel. Thinking he was being stalked, he went down to the police station. While waiting, he got to chatting with an old woman, and eventually told her all the events that he had encountered. The old woman then looked at him for a moment, smiled, and then said the words, "So you want to be famous?" Ricky burst out of the police station, but to his surprise, the world around him had changed. He was in a graveyard with the Raven, who was holding his Fortnite character's decapitated head. Ricky then woke up in a hospital bed, and the doctor had told him that he had been imagining all these horrors because of how addicted he was to playing games on his Twitch channel. Ricky eventually went home and decided to play a game of Fortnite to put his mind at ease. Seems like a great idea. A year later, Ricky was doing well. His stream had taken off, and he had made himself a good chunk of change. Never had to worry about money anymore either. One day, while he was playing Fortnite on Twitch, he was given a ton of donations, all of which were only $1. Each donation had a message, a random number with a random letter. Confused, he thanked the viewer for the donations and continued the stream. After it ended, he couldn't stop thinking about those weird donations. He went onto his Twitch account to take a look at the messages again. That's when he put them together. The message read, "So, you want to be famous?" Up next, number 2, The Rift. The Rift tells the story of a player who was super excited about Season 5 of the game. Once playing it, he fell in love with the rifts, and loved being able to run through rifts, especially when he had a bad start. It was super fun, and helped him win twice as much as he used to. One night while playing, he went over to Paradise Palms searching for a rift, but the one that he found looked a little bit different than the others he had seen. It looked more like a black hole. Thinking it was a glitch, he ran through it anyway. Except this time, rather than skydiving, he was elsewhere. A place that didn't look like the rest of the game. There was a river made out of lava, buildings were made out of bones, and there were people crying in agony. That's when he took a closer look to realize that those people were the bodies of players that he had previously killed, crying out to him. Traumatized, he tried to get away, but the dead players continued to talk to him, telling him secrets about the game and what to expect from the future. They kept repeating a date too, followed by another date, over and over again. That's when he realized that they were saying his birthday, meaning the latter date had to be the date of his death. That's when his game crashed, since the player has desperately been looking for another rift like that one, but hasn't been able to find one since. And finally, at number 1, Disconnected. Our final creepypasta on this list is Disconnected. It tells of a player reminiscing about Season 1 and his pal CJ, who a while back had moved out of state. CJ and the protagonist were high school buddies, and their friendship flourished while playing Fortnite together, playing for hours on end. But one day, CJ just disappeared. He never returned to the game, and he never replied to the protagonist on social media, and never returned his calls. The protagonist grew worried. Months went by and there was still radio silence. One day, someone joined the protagonist's own private game, even though the player wasn't invited. So the protagonist kicked the player out and decided to go on some solos. Afterwards, he went to bed. That night, he dreamt that he was playing with CJ, who was using the Reaper skin. They won, but then the Reaper turned into CJ himself, his actual body, which was horribly decomposed. Terrified and distressed, the protagonist woke up, hoping that his dream wasn't a reality. The next day, he played Fortnite and that odd stranger reappeared in his game yet again. When he tried to kick the player, the game wouldn't let him, so he tried to shut off his game, but his computer wouldn't shut off. The player's mic kept going off, but all he could hear was static. So the protagonist played the game anyway, and it appeared that this mysterious player was using a namebot. As he played onwards, he saw that the player's character, the Reaper, was trying to talk. Not with his mic, but in the game, with the character's mouth moving. It looked as if he was trying to make out 3 small words, so the protagonist asked him to say it over the mic instead, but the mic was silent. Next thing they know, they're playing 2v2, and eventually, they win the game. The protagonist looked over to his partner to see that the character had disappeared from the game entirely. That's when in real life, the protagonist felt the room he was in go entirely cold. He got a chill up his spine. He turned around from his computer, and standing there was CJ. But CJ didn't look human. He was rotting. The protagonist asked, "CJ, what happened to you?" CJ looked at him with a blank expression, and his mouth moved into those 3 short words. He said, "You left me." And from there, the creepypasta ended with the sound of a bloody impact, and what seemed to be a body dropping exploding and being dragged away. And at number 10, Followed. From YouTube channel Flip-the-Script, Followed is a story about a gamer who used Fortnite to help with his mental health since he got into an accident and almost died. He keeps seeing a rabbit with a ski mask who keeps paying him a visit whenever he plays the game. The rabbit talks to him and tells him that he will never cheat death again because of the accident. He thinks that his mother keeps letting the bunny man in, but she tells him that he's just seeing things. So one Friday night he plays a solo match and notices that everyone in the pregame lobby has the same default blonde guy skin. He ignores it, thinking he's in a server with a bunch of noobs. The match begins, he lands at Tilted Towers, and apparently so does everybody else on the server. Also weird. He grabs a loot chest and scores a scar, and then starts taking out foes. He begins to suspect that they're all bots. Their names are Default Fortnite Player with the number. Every time he gets a kill, another player named Frank also gets a kill, the only one without the default name. Finally, it gets down to just him and Frank, and that's when the player realizes who Frank is. It's the Bunny Man. But in the game, he tries to take Frank out, and that's when he hears the demonic voice say, "I dare you to kill me." He keeps missing Frank and is soon out of ammo. Before he can switch weapons though, Frank appears in person and says out loud, "I dare you to kill me." The player then dies of a heart attack. And at number 9, The Bus Driver. Another creepypasta from Flip-the-Script, this one is called The Bus Driver, and is about a scary Easter egg. The player in this story heard a rumor on Reddit about the battle bus, an Easter egg that you can only see on Friday the 13th. In order to see it at the start of a match, on that date, don't get out of the battle bus. Stay until you're about to get kicked off, then unplug your router. Plug it back in and do not find a new game to join, and you'll be still on the bus. So the player's like, yeah, I'm gonna give it a go. And it works. Except it's not what they expected. The bus doesn't go over the map, but rather it goes through a passage of time. Events throughout history play on the screen in front of him. Then he sees the future. He sees World War III break out, there's a nuclear fallout, and he sees his family members die. Time flashes forward again, and he sees himself trying to survive with other war survivors. A missile drops down from the sky and kills him. He's then kicked off the bus, and is pretty traumatized. And at number 8, Disappearing Teddy. The disappearing teddies are nothing new in Fortnite. They've freaked out a lot of people in the past, but generally they're kinda cool. But this creepypasta makes them a little bit more weird than most of us would like. So the player in this story is going through the motions of a regular match when he finds a box with the name Lucy on it. Opening it, he finds a rusty key and a diary. He reads the diary. It's about a 10-year-old girl named Lucy who, in the first entry, writes that it's her birthday, and that she's excited that her father took the day off work to spend it with her. She also notes that her mother recently passed away. The player decides to keep reading in hopes of figuring out what the key is for. The girl continues to write about how her father grows increasingly distant, and how she was forbidden to go down to his laboratory. The last entry in the journal reads that she is going to go down into the lab with her teddy bear. The player starts to look around the house and finds a cellar door in the backyard. The key opens it. The player then notices a burlap bag on the ground with a locket that reads "Best Mom Ever." There's also a big torn up teddy bear. The player continues to search the cellar, going through another door which has claw marks along the side of the wall. The player then finds a skeleton with a pistol next to it, and a camcorder. The camcorder turns on and starts to play. It's the dad panicking about the mother hearing animalistic noises in the background. The player begins to leave the cellar when he notices that the teddy bear that was there when he entered is now gone. So spooky. And at number 7, Last One Standing. This one tells of a kid named Bill whose parents left for the night. The babysitter hadn't shown up yet, so he went to his room to play some Fortnite. He starts a match and everyone on his team had the Dark Knight skin on. All of a sudden, the lights in his house shut off. Bill goes to find a flashlight, but a notification pops up on his screen from an anonymous user that reads, "Why'd you do that?" Bill was confused. He goes downstairs and locks the front door, but then he hears a knock. He opens the door and no one is there, except there's a letter. He reads it and the words on it repeat, "Don't lock, don't look," over and over again. But the very last word on the letter says, "Hide." Bill freaks out and hides under his bed. That's when he feels air on the back of his neck. He rolls over and sees a bunch of pairs of red eyes behind him. Bill then disappeared from that day onwards and his parents never found his body. And at number 6, The Empty Lobby. From YouTuber Big Mama Eternal, this creepypasta is about a girl named Eternal, who was a stripper. She liked to use the Battlehound skin, and thought of it as a lucky charm. She would often get a solid amount of kills when playing with it. There's also a mention of gonorrhea in this story, but we'll just kinda skip over that part. Anyway, the skin started taking a life of its own and wanted all of the strippers' attention. And one night, when she returned home at 4 AM and booted up the game, the lobby was entirely empty. Her character wasn't there. Thinking it was a glitch, she restarted her system and the game. But the lobby was still empty. So she started the game anyway, and her character wasn't there. Just a view of the pregame lobby and other players in the game. So she shut it off again, decided to play again in the morning. But in the morning, the game kept crashing. In her headset, she could only hear growling. The next day after work, she got home and put on her headset. The growling continued. continued. But it wasn't just coming out of her headset this time. It was in her room. She opened her closet and there was the battle hound. 2 days later, she was found dead in her apartment. And at number 5, The Laughing Man. The Laughing Man, despite having some major sound issues, is a pretty decent creepypasta from YouTuber Funtime Flash. The story starts off with the player describing how he and his friends encountered a terrifying player added to their squad who had a sinister laugh, one that was quite unsettling. They eventually finished that match and hopped on another squad one, thinking that there was no way they'd ever see this guy again. 4 games later, he appeared in their lobby, and the laughing would not stop. They tried to leave the match, but couldn't. The narrator even tried to unplug his Xbox. That's when the Laughing Man started screaming, and the player got a text message from an unknown number. It was a photo of him playing Fortnite. His Xbox then just shut off on its own. Slowly, the player went over to his window, and that's when he saw him. A man whose face was covered in horrific stitches. He stood there laughing. The player called the police, locking all of the doors and windows in his house. The man started banging on his window, and his Xbox just turned back on. The laughing was even louder than ever. Finally, the police had come. He looked outside to see the terrifying man was being put into handcuffs and towed away into the back of a cop car. He later found out that this man had been stalking kids on Fortnite. Up next, number 4, Wrath of the Ice King. This creepypasta comes from Mr. Gruesome on YouTube. The Ice King ruled over his land as a dictator. He was hated, and if anyone did anything against his authority, they would receive some sort of severe punishment. Now it was decided amongst the Ice King's closest advisors and subjects that the only way people of Fortnite could ever live in peace was if the Ice King was assassinated. They decided to target him when he was his most vulnerable, when he was sitting on his throne on top of Polar Peak. His subjects quietly killed all of his guards one by one, and with his defenses low, entered the throne room confronting him. The Ice King laughed at his subjects, declaring that there was no feasible way to kill him. His subjects all attacked him. One by one, he laughed at them, snapping their necks, slicing them in half, and sending his ice hounds after them, who tore at their flesh. The very last subject who remained standing of the 6 tried to run for his life. The Ice King caught him and then beat him to a pulp. The next day, he addressed the people of his kingdom, threatening death to anyone who committed treason and that their families would be brutally sentenced to death as well, facing the wrath of the Ice King. And at number 3, Trog Terror. Another one from Flipless Script at this number. The narrator tells the story about the real danger that comes from spotting the Yeti in Fortnite. Now, he was at level 71 of that season's battle pass, and he had managed to unlock Trog, the awesome Yeti skin in the game. Excited, he eagerly equipped him, only to swear that he heard Trog speak, saying something the likes of "Trog go home," over and over, as if it were a taunt. The issue was, though, our humble narrator soon discovered that he was the only one who could hear what Trog was saying. Now, a few days went by with the player unlocking more levels in the battle pass. Nothing out of the ordinary. But one morning, he woke up early and decided to play Fortnite before work. He noticed that Trog was talking again, now saying something different. Trog must go home. After googling it, he discovered that there was a hidden Yeti cave in the game, and perhaps he'd stumbled on the beginnings of an Easter egg. He was wrong. Not really in the mood to complete a challenge, he decided to just equip his Raven skin instead. But when he got to the lobby, he was wearing the Trog skin. Weird. It kept saying, "Trog must go home." Eventually, growing tired of this, he sought out the cave. When he arrived, he was shocked to see Trog take over his character. Trog entered and went up to a part of the cave and started shoveling snow, revealing a cold body, another Yeti. Trog then split from the character, turning the character into a default skin. And Trog, well, he didn't look like he normally did. Instead, he looked like a demonic, bloody Yeti, covered in red stains. He turns to the character and says, "You're Trog's dinner." The body of the other Yeti comes to life, and the two of them begin to feast on the character's body. The story ends with the narrator warning others to not go into the cave with Trog equipped. Otherwise, you'll die. And at number 2, didn't stick the landing. This creepypasta tells the tale of a gamer named Jared, a talented player who had gotten his fair share of wins and kills. But he was only human. He got eliminated a lot too. Anywho, Jared is playing Fortnite when he gets a message from his friend who asked him if he'd seen the news about the mass suicides. Jared's like, "What?" And his friend sends him a screenshot of the news channel that he's watching. People are committing mass suicide without any explanation, jumping from high heights in particular. It's like Bird Box, but not. So Jared, just a little freaked out, just decides to take his mind off it by playing another match in Fortnite. That's when he gets a strange compulsion. As he's jumping out of the battle bus, he decides to land on the highest point on the map that he can. Once he glides down to a high peak, the compulsion gets worse. Build. So he starts to build, up, and up, as if he's building a stairway up to the heavens. And when he's exhausted of all of his resources, he looks around the map, players and firefights, all the locations he had previously traversed with joy, and he jumps. He doesn't know why, he just does. And out of nowhere, as soon as his character hits the ground, he falls off his chair in real life. An intense pain rifles through his body. He's on the floor and he can't move. He just lies there, knowing that death is impending. Now, side note, this creepypasta is by Chris Hum, and worth giving a watch. Rather than just using gameplay, it's told from a POV angle, and it's actually kinda neat to see play out. And finally, in at number 1, Zozo the Demon. Zozo the Demon, our final one from Flipless Script, is one of the longest creepypastas on our list today, and it's damn good. So it starts off with the narrator telling us that he bought the Ark, but felt duped. Now for starters, the skin, which is supposed to be female, was male. He also looked rough, having burnt armor and black frayed wings instead of, the gold armor and the regular wings. Now, backtracking a bit, the narrator tells us that a few days ago he stumbled upon a Ouija board. Having nothing to do, he decided to give it a go even though he was alone. After asking it a series of questions, nothing happens, exactly what he expected. He's about to put it away when it starts to move, spelling out the word Zozo. From there, Zozo continues to communicate with him. Being a cynic, narrator starts asking it questions that it couldn't possibly know the answers to. He asks it about his cousin who had died recently, to which it responds by spelling out the words drunk driver, which is how he died, in a car accident because of a drunk driver. Naturally, our narrator freaks out and puts the board away, tucking it into the attic. Trying to feel better, he googles Zozo, and turns out that Zozo is actually a real thing that other people had encountered. As he continues to read things about Zozo online, he comes across an article that makes him terrified. He never said goodbye to the spirit, he just put the board away, meaning he never severed the connection to him and Zozo. Now that night, he has a dream about Fortnite. He's wearing a new skin, a demon with charcoal feathers, who looks like he came right out of hell. The next day was when he saw Ark in the shop and bought her. After Ark appeared otherwise, he tried other skins instead, but the game would not let him equip anything else. It would always revert to this strange, evil-looking skin. Now the first match he was in, he died early on, but instead of being transported out of the game like usual by that robotic machine that collects you, his character, who he begins to call Zozo, turns around, facing him. Zozo jumps at him, filling up his monitor. Petrified, the player gets up and runs out of his room, only to trip on something in the hallway. Looking down, he realizes that the object that tripped him is none other than the Ouija board. It starts to spell something out on its own. You will die. Afraid that he needs to do something quick to stop his impending doom, he goes back onto Fortnite to discover that the skin no longer exists. Instead of Ark, the name that appears is Zozo, and the skin isn't even there, as if it had left the game. That's when he felt something cold on his shoulder. He looked up. It was Zozo in the flesh. Despite his presence, our narrator runs into the hallway, going straight to the Ouija board. He spells out goodbye. Zozo screams, trying to claw at our narrator, but he was starting to fade. Our narrator grabs the Ouija board, grabs some matches, and lights it on fire out in his backyard. Zozo, running after him, stops midair and basically explodes. The narrator goes back to Fortnite to discover that Ark has returned to what she should normally look like. That night, he dreams of Zozo in Fortnite. The demon tries to tell him that he can haunt him in his dreams, and that they're still connected. That's when our narrator remembers something. He didn't burn the planchette, just the board. And that's when he hears Zozo's horrific voice in his ear, "You will still die."
And at number 10, Sucked In. Wouldn't you just love to play video games all day? Not having to go to school or work, just sit back and play whatever you wanted? Well, apparently it's not all that grand. This player got home after a long day of school, desperate to play Fortnite. Their mom tells them to go outside with their friends, but she doesn't understand that they're all already online waiting for him to play. The player runs to his room and starts things up. After a few rounds, he falls asleep, with a player right on his tail. He turns around and pumps 4 shots into his gut with a shotgun. When the player was eliminated, he runs away, trying to figure out why everything seems different. Then he gets eliminated. A player had snuck up behind him. The player gets to the main menu screen, but he doesn't have a controller. He navigates the menu by walking. He's been sucked into the game. He only has the ability to play solos. He loads in, and in the lobby he can tell that everyone else is real as well. He thinks about it and determines that Fortnite, after this game, is about to get 99 new bots. He loads up the game and he hops out of the battle bus. When he lands, he sees another player. They both run away. The game progresses and everyone is passive. The circle gets so small that only one player can fit inside, but the 3 remaining players are stacked above each other. One player falls and dies. You can hear his screams as his body turns into a bot. And then our author falls. He dies. And then is shown a cutscene from the opening of chapter 2. Then he hops out of the battle bus again, with no control over his actions. And at 9, it came from Slurpy Swamp. Slurpy Swamp is a good place to land. You can break almost any object and heal or gain shield, but usually quite a few players land here because of this. After landing, the author was able to get an elimination, but was nearly third-partied. After eliminating the other player, the gunfire slowed. There was probably only a few more people there, so the author ran towards the fire to be able to third-party. When they got there, they eliminated the winner and gathered the loot, but figured there must be someone else. And they were right. They caught a glimpse of someone as they ran behind a building, but as they did, their game began to lag, skip, and jump. Off to grandmother's house they go. When they recovered 10 seconds later, the map had changed. The circle was small and only around them. There was only one other person in the game. They went to where they landed earlier and they heard a voice. "You shouldn't be here." And it was just a man. Not a monster or creature, just some dude. The author approached and saw that he was holding his right arm and bleeding. He said it again, "You shouldn't be here." He began to come towards the author. The author started backing away, but ended up running towards the exit. The voice got more demonic, but said the same thing. The being ended up catching the author and beating his face to a bloody pulp. Number 8, Tier 666. Remember when tiers maxed out at 100? Now people can have unlimited tiers. You can see people in their 300s. This author was already in his 100s. When starting a game of duos, the author gets partnered with a player who has a red fusion skin and was tier 666. They try to talk and get nothing in return, but this is normal. After landing, they dominated. This was one of the best players of all time. They got an easy win. The author had 7 kills and his partner had 15, but he could have easily tripled that. After sending a friend request, the partner joins the author's game, still saying nothing, but he sees a message in chat. It says, "Do you want to be as good as me?" And of course they did. He said yes and the partner left the lobby. They then received a gift from this player. It was the red fusion skin he was using. When it was equipped the next match, the author dominated, 17 kills with the win. Everything wrong seemed to disappear. He would never find a gray or green weapon, always gold or purple, right after landing as well. After a few days of playing, the author hit tier 666 and was on the cusp of the next tier. When he achieves it, everything goes wrong. He feels a burning sensation in his leg that quickly spreads to his room. He was on fire. He passed out and saw the skin he had used so much. It spoke. It said, "Another victim," and then it just grabbed him. And at 7, scared. This author had been playing the Fortnite Chapter 2 Halloween update, with all the husks and all the jump scares of finding one. They played Fortnite almost every night, so when the husks started entering his dreams, he needed to stop. The worst part is that after not playing for even a week, they were still there. He even started to get worried at school. He assumed they'd be in lockers, behind a door, or even in his desk. It got so bad he'd have to go to the bathroom every 20 minutes to cool off. One moment, he saw it. A husk standing in the bathroom. It turned around, shrieked like in the game, and charged him. He fell out of the bathroom and ran away. Everyone was staring at him while the husk was chasing. Nobody was helping. And the husk eventually caught up, and everything started getting dark. And at 6, error 666. When there is a new location on the map, you know you need to go there. Especially when after going on message boards and forums, you're the only one talking about it. The area was burnt, and a fire started. It started to spread. All buildings in this area looked like locations from the author's childhood. Their aunt's house, grandparents' house, and their own childhood home. There were even personal items in the houses. In the grandparents' house there was heavy breathing. It slowly got demonic, as if the grandparents were struggling to breathe. Then the author got a cold chill in the real world. In their own home they saw something odd, a shadow coming towards the author. The game started to update and then the shadow lunged. The game froze and crashed, with the update starting. The screen appeared and said error 666. He looked it up and online it said that the error was not an official part of the game, and the only way to fix it was run. The author didn't run, he stayed put. But then, the doorbell rang.
Moving on to 5, followed 2. It's a follow-up. Get it? Because it's followed? Yeah, I'll be here all week, guys. Anywho, this is another one from Flip the Script, and if you haven't, you should head on over there and watch Followed, because this is the second part to it. Or check out our Creepypastas Part 1 list to find out what it's all about before listening to this number. Followed 2 tells the story of Carter, who was the head detective on the Followed case. Still wanting to solve the case, he sought out 2 individuals who were known to deal with video game related cases, who go by the names of Chris and Jay in the story. Chris and Jay came into town and Carter picked them up from the airport. At the police station, they read the coroner's report. They decide to pay the deceased victim's mother a visit. After finding what appeared to be suspicious evidence, they take the mother down to the station to question. Both Jay and Chris, after talking to her, believe that the death of the gamer was not supernatural as they initially thought, but rather that the mother and her boyfriend had killed the boy. That night they stake out the boyfriend's house while waiting for the warrant to take a look. The next morning inside the house, what they find is eerie. There's a recording that repeats the phrase, "I dare you to kill me," over and over again. There's a bunny rabbit suit. And in the trash, there's a ski mask. Boyfriend is then charged for murder. Carter ends off the story by saying that sometimes creepy and scary isn't always supernatural. Sometimes the scariest thing of all is finding out that the people that we trust can create the worst horrors. Moving on to number 4, the smoke grenade. This one comes from YouTube channel Mr. Squidzle. It tells of the smoke grenade weapon that was removed from the game a little while back. Protagonist of the story woke up one morning and booted up Fortnite to discover that the smoke grenades were back in the game and available to use in a limited time game mode for solos. He thought this was really weird because this rarely happens. So anywho, he gave it a go and starting the match, nothing looked different. As he progressed, he found smoke grenades in a chest, but they were kinda odd. There was no rarity, no info, nothing showing up above them, but he grabbed them anyway. That's when he noticed that one of his favorite Twitch streamers was also in the same match as him, having the stream playing on the side on his phone while he was playing Fortnite. Excited, he kept moving, hoping to cross paths with them eventually. Shortly afterwards, he came upon some other players and used the smoke grenades, but didn't manage to get any damage on them. As he quickly reloaded, he noticed that the players he threw the smoke grenades at had completely disappeared after the smoke cleared. He didn't see them run away, and he didn't get to see them be eliminated either. Next thing he knew, on the side feed it said the username of the player he had just attacked, along with something that said they had been taken by the smoke. But he thought again, I didn't see an elimination. So he kept moving, and he used the grenades again later on, and the same thing happened. In the feed it said the player was taken by the smoke. Finally, it was the end of the game. And lucky for him, it was him versus the Twitch streamer. The two go at it, they build a bunch of stuff, shoot at each other, and then he decides to use the smoke grenade on him. He disappears. No elimination shows up, but the victory royale is announced. Feeling quite proud, he looks over to the Twitch streamer's stream that he had on his phone to see the reaction. Instead, he saw smoke rising around the streamer in real life, that filling up his room. The streamer started to scream, and then when the smoke cleared, he was gone. Moving on to number 3, The Ghost of Haunted Hills. This one comes from YouTube channel Creepypasta.com, presented by Eric Alden. This one dives into a mystery about Fortnite discovered by a player who wanted to see what all the hype surrounding the game was about. After watching hours on Twitch, he tried it out himself and downloaded it. His first game was awful, and he was knocked out of the match pretty much immediately. This happened quite a few times too, so he decided to look up a tutorial on YouTube and get some tips on how to not die right from the get-go. This one tutorial suggested that new players should land on the outskirts of the map, somewhere like haunted hills, so that's what our protagonist did, and it helped quite a bit. He managed to place in the top 10 in his first game after the tutorial, so he kept landing there every single match. By 4 AM, he decided to head to bed, satisfied and really excited about playing Fortnite again. 2 weeks later, he was still playing Fortnite, but after every few games he started to notice something. Whenever he landed at haunted hills, he kept seeing something out of the corner of his eye, but each time, he was alone. No one else was around him. He figured it was a glitch. He even recorded his gameplay once, but even then, when watching back, at the moments where he swore he saw something, nothing was there on the recording. So he did some research on haunted hills and found out that the location was actually suggested by a player, and Epic Games liked the suggestion so much that they actually put it in the game. The original suggestion post featured a drawing, and after doing some more research, the player discovered that the drawing was also used in another post by the same poster to describe his PTSD about his family dying, and how this was the location where they died and what it looked like. Our protagonist naturally freaked out a little bit about how dark of a backstory Haunted Hills had, but that's when he realized that maybe what he was seeing out of the corner of his eye were the ghosts of this guy's dead family members. Moving on to number 2, Fear in the Fields. Another one from Flip the Script here. This creepypasta is told entirely in a demonic voice. The voice states how it used to be so lonely, but now it sees all of the victories, the defeats, everything in Fortnite. It can hear everything players say, the fights they have over mic, the cheers they shout when they win, the sadness when they lose, and the voice of mothers telling them to get off the game. Everything. But they've also heard worse things too. They recount multiple stories, one of which includes a player who got into a fight with their mother. The mother screamed at the player to get off Fortnite, but the player wanted to keep going. That's when they heard the flames. The mother shouted that the house was on fire. He heard the mother tried to get the gamer off, but then they were engulfed by flames. He heard the sound of the house collapsing around them. Another time, he heard a player go AFK as their father beat them to a pulp and they cried. They say that they hear the good and the bad, so next time you pass through their fields, fear not. The voice may be your only witness, listening in on whatever has happened to you. Overall, this one scores big points for the creepy demonic voice, so definitely go give it a listen if you want the full scare, guys. And finally, in at number 1, The Raven. Lastly, we have yet another one from Flip the Script called The Raven. The Raven is pretty popular, with over 277,000 views. So, what's it about? The protagonist of this story tells of how they were so excited to get the Raven skin, and when it finally came out, they were overjoyed to use it, playing for hours on end with it. Eventually, it was time for bed though. But that's when their night went from great to worse. They had a dream that the Raven broke into their bedroom, hovered over them, and murdered them. Jolting awake, they looked around the room, collecting their bearings. But that's when they noticed that a pair of purple eyes were glowing back at them from across the room. The player heard a voice say, "Nevermore." He thinks he's still dreaming. But then the eyes got closer and closer until he saw the whole body of the figure, revealing that it was none other than the Raven. The Raven said once again, "Nevermore." That's when the player's Xbox flickers on and turns on Fortnite. Without realizing what he's doing, he gets out of bed and begins to play the game, loading in solos. He's crying, unable to move his body, panicking. He goes to Tomato Town, deciding to play it safe since he's afraid of what will happen if he loses. The Raven watches on, staring at him intently. The player, running to make it out of the storm, is then sniped and knocked out of the match. That's when his TV goes static. Slowly, he turns to look at the Raven. Raven lets out a piercing scream and then says, nevermore. This is when the player blacks out. Next thing he knows, he wakes up in the hospital. The doctor there told him that he was the victim of a house robbery. A robber broke into the home and beat him, shot him, and left him near death. Confused, the player asks questions, but the doctor says that he'll go get his attending doctor to talk to him through his upcoming surgeries. A look of confusion still sits across the player's face. So before the doctor leaves the room, he tries to comfort the player by saying, "Don't worry, Dr. Nevermore is great." And number 10, Rage Quit. This creepypasta comes from YouTuber Flip-the-Script, who's pretty much the king of Fortnite creepypastas on YouTube. We featured a few of their other creepypastas in our last video too, so be sure to check them out at some point. Anywho, this creepypasta is about a player who decided to hop on duos with a stranger when all of his friends were away on vacation. Wanting to play with someone who had their mic on, he almost left the game when finally his new partner said, "Hello?" It was a young child, and while our protagonist normally plays with older players, when he lands with the kid, they actually mesh up really well, managing to knock out 2 other duos right from the get-go. That's when he hears the kid politely say, "Just a second," to someone in the room with him. The protagonist asks if the kid's talking to his parents, but the kid says, "No, it's my guardian." The kid then proceeds to tell him that it's his guardian angel. The protagonist tries to shrug it off as the kid having an active imagination, but as the game progresses, the kid keeps talking to his guardian angel, and it gets a little weird. It sounds like things are being thrown around the kid's room in the background. So the protagonist asks if everything is alright over there, and the kid replies, "Yeah, she just doesn't like it when I don't listen, but I'm getting off after this game." 5 minutes go by and he hears the kid say, "I told you I'm going to get off after this game." The protagonist then hears something chilling. A voice replies to the kid in the background saying, "Now, now, 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 now," growing more and more sinister with each word. The kid's character in the game starts to lag and glitch, and then the player hears the kid crying. Then out of nowhere, the kid is disconnected from the party, from the game, and from Xbox Live. The player tried to message the kid a few days later on Xbox Live, but never got a reply. Up next, number 9, The One That Crawls. This creepypasta from YouTuber O1G tells of a player who was playing Fortnite and started getting weird chills while playing. Playing Fortnite on a daily basis, the protagonist used to be a really good player, the best in his friend group, until he started getting these weird chills, and this itch that would go up and down his neck and feel like it was burrowing into his skin. To the objective eye of all of his friends and parents in real life, nothing was there, but the player kept feeling it. It started ruining his focus on the game. His friends didn't believe him and started to tease him for how he was becoming crappier at Fortnite. 2 weeks later, as this continued, he took a week off playing the game. The itching stopped entirely. A week after that, he returned to the game and everything went back to normal. The crawling and itching were entirely gone, so the player brushed it off. But then something weird started happening when he and his friends would take down other players. A glitch of sorts. As they shot players and they dropped to the ground and started crawling, their heads would start turning around and going upside down. It was very odd. He didn't think much of it at the time, but a week later, one of his friends, who was in the match with him, started getting an itch similar to the protagonist's. It was as if this itch was contagious, and if you kept playing Fortnite while having this itch, you would share a similar fate to those who had seen crawling. That's where the creepypasta ends, unfortunately. But one can only imagine that those who get the itch and continue to play endure a terrible fate, with their own heads twisting backwards like their characters in the game. Up next at 8, AFK. This one is from Flip-the-Script, another one. This creepypasta is about a player's friend going AFK, away from keyboard, during a game of Fortnite. The protagonist's friend Andrew was hilarious to play Fortnite with, although he had a tendency to go AFK. This was towards the end of season 3, and our protagonist noticed an extra challenge that they hadn't completed, called AFK. The description of the challenge read, "Follow the sign in Greasy for something that will knock you out of your seat." Our protagonist and Andrew made a point of landing in Greasy Grove to complete the challenge, although they noticed that there weren't a lot of other players landing there, which was odd, considering it was part of the challenge. They see the sign on one of the buildings outside to discover a note that read, "Go to Snobby Shores and get a single kill." So they follow those instructions. When they get there, they manage to find a duo and knock them out. 2 identical messages then pop up over those defeated players amongst their loot that reads, "Acquire 666 amount of wood and make a 1x1 fort with the materials." Unsure if a building that high was possible, the 2 of them started collecting wood and built the fort. After building it, they realized that the stairs they had built had disappeared, now replaced with a sign that read, "Jump down." Worried that if they jumped down they would die, our protagonist asks if Andrew wants to go first. Andrew jumps down, and after a few seconds it says he needs to be revived. Over the mic, our protagonist tries talking to Andrew, but gets no response, so our protagonist thinks that maybe he's gone AFK. So instead he gets off and starts playing some solo matches instead. This is when he notices that the AFK challenge has disappeared. The next day he sees that Andrew is online on Fortnite. He joins his game and tries to talk to him, but there's still no response. So he starts spamming Andrew, worried that this isn't just a broken mic situation. Later he goes into a new lobby and Andrew joins. He tries talking to Andrew, happy that he's not just AFK. But that's when Andrew's speaker turns on and a voice replies, "Andrew isn't here right now." And at number 7, Season 0. This creepypasta comes from a YouTuber by the name of Neo. The story follows the tale of a player who had signed up for the beta of Fortnite. Weirdly enough, after they signed up, the copy of Fortnite that they got wasn't one that they downloaded online. Rather, it was delivered to their door. Excited, but ignoring the weird fact that it was delivered to their door, the player popped it into their PC to give it a go. Being a big fan of other battle royale games, they were a little disappointed disappointed with what they saw. Textures were all over the place, areas of the map were unfinished, and the game was full of glitches, and overall it seemed really unpolished. But they continued to play anyway. The Season Pass section was odd too. It was stated to be Season 0, with Season 1 being withheld until the game was out in early access. But something didn't feel right about this. The skins that were in it had red eyes and looked as if they belonged to a horror game. When he started the match, the gameplay was more disturbing than a regular Fortnite game. Whenever you killed someone, you wouldn't return to the lobby. The kills were more gruesome, and there was screaming. Whenever somebody got a victory royale, a link was sent to the player and it revealed a list of winners, with comments from all of them that said they had fun while playing. These players were said to have all disappeared. The protagonist did some research after the fact. Turns out that the employee who added all of this stuff to the game was fired. Beta test was quietly and quickly removed. Up next at 6, Playground. This creepypasta is from a YouTuber named Mr. Gruesome, and is about the playground mode in the game. The protagonist in the story tells about how he jumped at the chance to check out the playground mode, and when he loaded up the game and landed in Dusty Divot, he soon realized that he was the only player on the island in this particular match. Ted freaked out. He was like, hey, I'll work on my building skills, and started to harvest material. That's when he heard laughter, and it sounded like the laughter of a child. After finding some loot, he was about to leave Dusty when he heard more laughter. Turning around, he saw a default skin facing him, despite being the only one in the match. The default skin started acting strangely, running towards the player. So the player pulled out their green pump and shot the default skin right in the head. But it did nothing. That's when the skin stopped directly in front of the player, and in a demonic voice it said, leave and never return, or else. Immediately afterwards, the player's PS4 and TV shut off on its own. Up next, number 5, Hyper-Realistic Fortnite. Another one from Mr. Gruesome at this number. So this story follows a player who hops on Fortnite one evening after getting home. Logging on, he begins a solo match. Playing as usual, he lands a Dusty Divot and starts to loot. He gets his first kill, but then he notices something odd in the distance. It's a default skin, except it didn't quite look like a default skin. Getting closer, he realized why it looked so odd. It was pretty realistic. He shot at it with his sniper, but rather than eliminating the player, something else happened. The bullet lodged into the player's skin, and he saw blood starting to pour out from the wound. Feeling nauseous, he exited out of the match, thinking that his imagination was playing tricks on him. Back in the main menu though, he noticed that his own skin started to look realistic too. Every single skin looked way more realistic than it should, and when he went to the default skin, it was bleeding. It wasn't his imagination. He turned off the game and shut off his Xbox. Thinking it was a horrible glitch, he just went to bed. But as he closed his eyes, he began to see the skins bleeding and had horrible nightmares. Moving on at number 4, the Wukong. This one comes from a channel called Snipe2G, and it's a remake of another creepypasta. See if you guys can figure out which one it is from our previous lists. It follows a story of a player who gets excited when they see their favorite skin, the Wukong, come back into the game shop. Finally having enough V-Bucks to afford it, he buys it and notices that it's not quite its usual color in its eyes. Instead, they're blood red. The player is concerned, so he decides to reach out to Epic Games, but they reply saying that there shouldn't be any glitches with that particular skin. After a quick Google search, he finds out that no one else has had this problem before, so he thinks nothing of it despite being a little confused. It's probably just a bug. He starts a match only to discover that with every kill, the Wukong's eyes would gradually become less red. Deciding that getting more kills is the answer to getting Wukong back to normal, he just grinds all night. When it's gone really late, he realizes that there's a strange noise coming from downstairs in real life inside of his house. It didn't sound like anything that he had heard before. So he calls his parents who weren't home, and they tell him not to worry because they're on their way back. But their arrival came too late. The player looked towards his bedroom door, and through the darkness in the hallway, he saw glowing red eyes. Thinking it was his dog, he was about to turn around and continue playing when he saw the owner of the eyes was moving slowly towards him in the shadows, coming into his room. That's when he realized it was the Wukong, watching him from the hallway. He passed out, waking up sometime later in the hospital. The doctor told him that he shouldn't worry, and that his attending doctor, Dr. Wukong, was on his way. Up next, number 3, the skin. This one comes from a YouTuber named Neo. His Creepypasta Season 0 we talked about on one of our previous Fortnite Creepypastas lists. He's now got a follow-up to that one on his channel too, so definitely go check it out after this video. Anywho, the skin follows the story of a gamer who was really good at Fortnite, but stopped playing after an encounter with a mysterious skin. It was around Season 4 when this occurrence happened. He noticed that a new skin was available in the store called the Consumer, which didn't have an image, just a gold background. When he got it, he noted that it looked like a default skin, but it was a progressive one, so he decided to give it a go regardless. When he showed it off to his friends, they said that he wasn't wearing a new skin, and they just assumed it was a glitch. As he played a match with it, he noticed that his skin was making weird noises whenever it was hit. As he continued to play, the skin went up a stage, and it had become reddish, eventually starting to mutate, growing boils on its arms. When people were knocked out by him, they would crawl on the ground and beg for mercy. None of his friends in the match could hear or see the things he was experiencing though. They also couldn't see the Consumer in the store. The next round, the Consumer skin had gotten worse, with its face split open like a fleshy flower. And the round after that, well, his character took control of itself, getting a slew of kills. He won the match, but the Victory Royale banner never appeared. That's when his friends started to notice that something was off with the skin. They could start to see its red fleshy body appear. It then said out loud, "I can't thank you enough for letting me out. I've achieved the Victory Royale, so now I must kill you." Then lunged towards the player's screen. The next few minutes was a battle for control, the skin versus the player. The player edged it closer to the edge of the mountain that they were on, and his friends started shooting at the character too. Eventually the character was knocked to the ground and died. Finally, the Victory Royale banner appeared. That's when one of his friends opened up the shop and said, "Hey guys, there's a new skin available. It's called the Consumer." Dun dun dun. Up next, number 2, the Dark Map. Here we have another one from Flipless Script. It follows the story of a YouTuber who is hungry for subscribers. He's going through his emails when he receives one from a strange email address. It's a bunch of numbers and letters. About to dump it into his junk mail, he sees that it contains something interesting. It's an image of a new Fortnite map that was supposed to be released on Halloween but was scrapped by Epic Games, allegedly. Thinking he could use this to his advantage and get more subscribers on his channel, he ends up taking this anonymous person up on their offer to check out this map and play it. The guy tells him that the experience that the YouTuber will have on the map will be different than what he has had. Thinking that that's odd, the YouTuber listens to the instructions that the guy gives him and turns the blur effect on his PC to optimize the gameplay. But when the map loads up, he sees why. It's strobing, and it puts him in almost a trance. It gets weirder. He starts to trip out and sees all these traumatic experiences that he had had in his life in the past. In a state of psychosis, he's hooked, watching as his father, a firefighter, died. And to his shock and horror, he's then put into his father's shoes and the same event replays. He drops into hell, and he sees himself burning down to bones. He then opens up the email to look at the map, and it's completely different than what he saw. He sees corpses of dead players making up mountains. A skin that he doesn't recognize with red horns that looks a lot like the devil begins to chase him. The YouTuber runs away as the devil skin tells him that he's the boogeyman, and that he'll see him in his dreams tonight. And finally, in at number 1, Stream Stalker. Let's end off this list with one final creepypasta from Flipless Script. In it, the narrator says that he streams a lot. He streams on YouTube instead of Twitch because he has a larger audience on there. And he's never revealed his real name, since he has a pretty decent following and didn't want to be annoyed on social media about streaming. So this one Friday night rolls around, and as he's playing, there's a guy who keeps spamming his chat, saying really rude stuff and harassing people. His moderators ban the guy. But shortly afterwards, the dude reappears, saying in the chat, "Hey, you can't ban me." The streamer then tells his mods to ban him already, getting annoyed. They claim they already did, and they go ahead and try to ban him again. The guy starts going off in the chat saying, "Tyler, you can't ban me." How did he know his first name? Now, thinking it was some guy with 2 accounts with a similar name, just trying to troll him, the streamer tells his mods to ban them again. A few minutes later, after things seem normal, the banned user appears once again. This time he says, "You're going to regret that, Tyler. Does Best Buy know that you call out sometimes to make content?" Tyler freaks out. How does he know where he works? The user then says, "Don't worry, Tyler," and states his address, saying that he'll see him soon. Tyler panics, ends his stream, and calls the police. The police say that there isn't anything they can do since the chat wasn't currently active after he ended the stream. So Tyler messages one of his mods and asks them to start up a new stream again so that they can get the police onto this guy. Tyler then goes around his house and double checks all of his locks. That's when he gets a message from his mod, who tells him to get out of his house right now. Tyler asks why, and the mod says to go to his channel and watch the stream. Tyler pulls it up. Someone else is streaming on his account that isn't his mod. The thumbnail is dark. He clicks on the video and sees that it's a stream of his house in real life. He can see himself through one of the windows. So Tyler turns off the lights, and then through his window he looks out. That's when he sees someone dressed up as the Raven. Then his narration ends, and it switches over to the voice of a police officer, who states that Tyler was stabbed repeatedly, along with a warning about being safe while you stream online.
In at number 5, Game Over. This Scary Fortnite Creepypasta you've never heard of is based on a story written by a user named I'mXShy on Reddit's Creepypasta page. The protagonist says about a month and 2 weeks ago his friend had completely disappeared. He was no longer at school and hadn't logged in to play Fortnite in a really long time. Once home from school, the gamer decides to squeeze in a quick game of duos before his parents got home. But while waiting for the game to fill in a teammate, he was shocked to find that his missing friend filled in the spot. On the other end of the mic, he could hear sobbing, and finally his friend spoke, "Kyle, why did you join? Why? He tried asking him what was wrong, but all his friend said back was, "I trust you with my life." Then the game just started. They dropped into Pleasant Park and immediately began battling it out with little to no time for talking about where exactly his friend had been. Out of nowhere, his friend gets sniped and drops immediately, and just as Kyle attempts to save his friend, he yells out, "Don't, we have no time, please just survive." This distraction soon leads to Kyle getting sniped as well, and suddenly he feels this odd rush of wind blow from his television as an ear-piercing shriek blares through his headset. The protagonist falls out of his chair as if some some invisible entity had pushed him over. Confused, rattled, and disturbed by this, he runs over to his friend's house to get some answers. Kyle knocks on the door and a woman answers. He says, "Who are you and where's Riley?" The mysterious woman's eyes were devoid of emotion as she said, "No one here is named Riley. Your game is just over." In at number 4, we eliminated you. The following story is one that will certainly make you double check that your home is safe before playing a game of Fortnite. This story is based on the creepypasta written by a user called 34MatthewsHD on the Reddit creepypasta page. The protagonists first boast that they usually average 20 plus kills a game with 67 victories overall. However, on this occasion, they were even surprising themselves at how well they were doing. This wouldn't be a creepypasta though without some strange happenings going on. He said that after dropping it into a solo match, he was really thrown off by the fact that literally everyone in the game were wearing the Cuddle Bear skins, and all had the same name, "We eliminated you." At first he thought he must have accidentally found his way into some glitched server and was playing with a bunch of hackers, which it's not every day that this kind of thing happens, so he kept playing. And as I mentioned earlier, he was racking up kills fairly quick, 10 kills in fact within the first few minutes of playing. Avoiding the majority of the conflict for most of the game, he made it to the top 3, but after being eliminated, he received an odd message from one of these "We eliminated you" players, and it was just a photo of his house. More terrifying than that was the fact that he could see himself through the window in the photo. He rushed to the window to see a man wearing a Cuddle Bear mask standing outside in the rain while holding a bloody knife. He quickly called 911 and found a closet nearby to hide in, and while hiding he realized that he had forgotten to lock his back door. Through the slats in the closet he could see the masked man creep into the home and proceed to smash his PS4. That might be the scariest part of this whole story. The man then slowly made his way to the closet where he was hiding, although right before he could open it, flashes of blue and red filled the home as a police siren wailed. The man was then tackled to the ground by police officers, and as they dragged him away he yelled, "If you play Fortnite again, we will eliminate you." In at number 3, Squads Fill. This creepypasta you've never heard of was found deep down in the darkness that is the Reddit creepypasta page and was written by a user Next Page Creepypastas. They begin by saying it was a regular Friday night just like any other. It was the protagonist and his other 2 friends starting up some squads fill on a game of Fortnite. They had played trios before but thought, hey, what was the harm in adding in a 4th person? A player soon joined that went by the name of Nightly Player. At first they said nothing, and coming from their mic was mainly static. But while the game was starting, they could hear the player saying in a rather terrified tone, "Please let me live." Sketched out by this, the other players asked where this Nightly Player wanted to land, and they could hear another voice subtly say, "Tilted," as then the kid's voice, again filled with fear, squeaked out the words, "Tilted." They dropped in, but the player wasn't moving, and suddenly the squad could hear faint crying and then a loud sound of a gun coming from the other player's mic. All 3 players froze, and before they could ask what that was, a man spoke through the mic and stated with authority, "He's gone, he didn't obey." In at number 2, Evil Team Leader. The following story is based on a creepypasta written by a user named Deadeye Echo. They explained that upon buying the Cuddle Team Leader skin, strange things started happening. They were fairly proficient at playing Fortnite and usually did pretty well, but as soon as they had this skin on, their game seemed to get better. And after finding a tactical shotgun, they were able to knock off 5 players within just the first 2 minutes. Anyone who's ever used that gun just knows how impressive that really is. Within minutes of arriving at Dusty Divot, the same thing happened, this time 8 kills in even less time. It felt as though the game was on autopilot. Everything from building to eliminating other players was just so much easier. He didn't mind either because it meant that he was one step closer to a victory royale. Finally, it was down to just 4 players including the protagonist, and while watching 2 players fighting it out, he was sniped from another direction. Although his player went down for just a moment, miraculously his health regenerated within seconds and he was back on his feet. The Cuddle Team Leader had stood back up as the sniper had moved in closer to finish what he had started. His player, again controlled by something else, whipped around and no-scoped the oncoming attacker. Now, it was just 1v1. Just before he was about to take out the final player, the protagonist feels his fingers go numb, causing him to drop his controller onto the floor. However, his character was still moving around. The Cuddle Team Leader takes out the final player and takes the victory, although our protagonist still couldn't move a muscle. He sat and watched the victory animation play on the screen. This was supposed to be a time for celebrating, yet for whatever reason, he couldn't move. He then receives an odd message from a player called the Evil Team Leader. It simply reads, "Now that you know what it feels like to win, I will show you how it feels to lose everything." According to news reports, the boy had suffered a massive stroke while playing the game, and after making a baffling recovery from this, the boy returned to his home to find that he had been permanently banned from Fortnite under the suspicion that he had been using an aimbot. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, The Raven's Lullaby. This final story is written by user DeathKnight23 on the Creepypasta page and involves some strange synchronicity with the Raven's skin and our protagonist. They loved the male version of the skin, but they felt the female version just lacked anything interesting. Even saying out loud to himself, "Such a wasted opportunity to make a good skin." As soon as he said that though, this song started playing with the words being, "The children are wailing, the raven is calling, do not fret, do not cry, as I sing you the raven's lullaby." Startled by this, he looked around the room to see where this song could be coming from, but to much of his dismay, he found nothing. Was the game glitching, or was he going insane? Wanting a break from Fortnite, he decided to take a quick nap. Now, deep in a dream, he was flying as if he was a raven, and the song continued to play. "The children are wailing, the raven is calling, do not fret, do not cry, as I sing you the raven's lullaby." He felt equally in control and out of control at the same time. He could fly, but at the same time he had an insatiable appetite for destruction. Down below, he spotted 4 kids walking into a home, and this is the moment that he lost all control. The raven's skin now merged with his own, instructed him to eliminate the children. He approached the home singing the raven's lullaby again as he entered, and without hesitation he clawed at the children, attacking them while playing Fortnite. One manages to run out of the home, and as the door slams shut, the protagonist wakes up from his deep sleep. In the distance, he can hear his father watching the news as the broadcaster says, "4 children attacked today in a random break and enter. 3 of the kids died later in hospital from their injuries. Authorities are saying the claw marks across their necks appear to be from some sort of bird." The police also added that 1 child had managed to escape and claimed moments before the attack the children could hear a song that went like this: "The children are wailing, the raven is calling, do not fret, do not cry, as I sing you the raven's lullaby."